Hello, and welcome to another episode of Pardon the Dust, Dusting Off Construction with Caitlyn and Jillian. We're your hosts, Caitlyn and Jillian, and we're here dusting off the topic of smart infrastructure with Jeff Pollock from Idencia yet again. So let's get to it. Jeff, can you please, I guess we don't really need an introduction of who you are, but in case somebody
You guys got one.
We got one, but in case somebody decided to skip episode 0, which I suggest you go back and listen to, but if you did and don't care to, this is Jeff now introducing himself and a quick little brief bio of who Idencia is.
Hello, I'm Jeff. Is that good enough?
No, we need to know.
Oh, okay.
Who's Idencia? What do you do?
Idencia is in the business of providing product data tracking for manufacturers of products that are sold into the construction industry. And it's a pleasure to be here with you again, Jillian.
So like I said, we are talking about smart infrastructure today. You had mentioned before we started recording that you just know smart infrastructure while you're sleeping. So
yes.
I'm excited to hear you talk about more about smart infrastructure and hopefully you're sleeping while you're doing it. Maybe you know more since you're awake, but we'll find out.
It has been said that I know more when I talk in my sleep than when I'm awake. But I do love the idea of smart infrastructure.
Yeah, awesome. So can you describe to us and our listeners, what is smart infrastructure?
Yeah. Well, my definition of smart infrastructure is infrastructure that conveys information about its manufacture, its construction, depreciation, and use to its stakeholders.
Awesome. No, that's very, I'm excited to learn more about this. So when do you think, or do you actually know when smart infrastructure became like a concept?
Mm-hmm. It started in the 1990s when the internet came into being, and it was really considered at that point infrastructure with technology associated with it. Mm-hmm. And then in the 2000s, it grew to, as the Internet of Things developed, meaning the devices talking to devices and providing information, it became more prevalent as a concept because it was then that sensors could be placed on infrastructure products or infrastructure in the field to provide data about the use and depreciation of the asset. And then later in the 2010s, it became, it sort of evolved into a greater capacity for deciphering, if you will, the information because with cloud computing developing and analytic capabilities improving and so forth, it became more or less more embedded, really, as a single kind of product concept. Mm-hmm. And just to show you how, to your point about how I know stuff in my sleep, if you go to ChatGPT and you ask it that, it will tell you exactly what I told you.
That makes sense.
Which is validating me, isn't it? I mean, it's not like I went to ChatGPT or anything.
So I guess I don't know if you asked ChatGPT this, but I'm going to ask you, just can you sum up how smart infrastructure works?
Yeah, well, it really is a matter of capturing data and providing data back, right? So in the manufacture of the product, it's about capturing data in a digital profile that is being created about the product being manufactured. And then as that product is put into the field, if it has sensors associated with it, then because it has a digital profile and can be identified, the data that comes back from those sensors can be associated with that exact element, that bridge panel in the bridge. And as a result of that, and the data available from all the other elements in a project, powerful analytics can be developed to not only describe what is happening, but to perhaps project what might happen in terms of useful life and so forth.
It's very cool. Yeah, it is very cool.
I can definitely see a lot of applications for that. However, we were talking about in episode 0 how the construction manufacturing industry, and especially certain segments of it, are very old school.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're pen and paper. Sometimes they're a little bit more advanced and they're using Excel sheets. Nothing wrong with that. But why would they want to get into smart infrastructure? What are the benefits and what are the changes that you see coming that might benefit from them moving in this direction?
Yeah. Well, ultimately, I would draw an analogy with thermostat manufacturers. Right now, today we have the Nest thermostats, and not everybody has them, but more and more people find great advantage in them. You can tell your smartphone to turn down the temperature, or if you have a second home, you can manage the temperature wherever you are. There's a lot of extra value from having that digital aspect to it. And the same thing will happen ultimately and it's actually starting now, as state departments of transportation find themselves needing to improve safety under more intense budget pressures. They're going to want to have these interactive assets in the field that they can will help make their job easier and less costly to maintain those. So right now, to be very candid, it's not there, but it's going to be there. Mm-hmm. And in the shorter term, if you look at it from the manufacturer's perspective, although it's not the complete smart infrastructure, just having digital records and starting to build that profile is valuable to the manufacturer, because now they can go, if they deliver a piece and the buyer calls up later and says that piece was damaged, they now can show them a picture of when it was delivered and the time it was delivered, and it was delivered in good shape. So as with everything, it evolves. Right now, the value is for the initial elements or the initial evolution of smart infrastructure is more valuable to the manufacturers. Ultimately, it's going to be more valuable to the entire value chain.
Yeah, of course. And I know that it's a slow ramp. I know that it's a slow ramp up. Obviously, we discussed that this started way back in the 90s, way back for all of us listening. But to be honest, it's already 30 years ago. And in the age of technology that I come from, that's a rather long time. So I can see it in my own work when we're on calls with customers or clients over in Europe, and they're talking about digital twins or having sensors, reusing product in new projects and kind of recycling product in that way. Can you share any projects that you know of that are using smart infrastructure methodologies at all?
Yes, actually I can. There is a project, there's a bridge that goes, we're in New Hampshire, it goes from Portsmouth, New Hampshire to Kittery, Maine. It's called the Living Bridge. It was developed mainly as by the University of New Hampshire as a prototype for the possibilities of what could be done. Actually, if you're interested, they have a interactive 3D rendering of it on their website, and you can find that at livingbridge.unh.edu, and it shows you exactly the value of having the data flow back from the bridge to the Department of Transportation.
Well, that certainly sounds like a lot of interconnectivity. What do you think some of the best ways to manage a combination of so many different tools that they can have in the smart infrastructure space could be, whether that's, a product tracking like what Idencia offers, or sensors like some of our partners offer? How are they going to manage having so many different tools all around at one time?
Yeah, that's a great question. And right now, that's where the market is. It's very fragmented. Ultimately, you'll find that there are providers that will offer more or less complete package. So, and that's one of the visions that I could see Idencia offering. So for the owners of the assets, they what will likely happen is they'll have what's called a digital twin, and the digital twin will be the central location for all of the data about that project. So it will contain information about the elements and the manufacture of the elements. It'll contain information about the installation. It'll contain information from sensors in the elements that are providing feedback back. And that data will come to the digital twin. And so having those digital twins will be the sort of central repository for all of the data for each project, and companies will be offering them.
Kind of like an ecosystem inside. Yeah. And you can get rid of that dreaded word silo. What happens?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that sounds great.
And so I just want to bring back, I definitely want to talk more about digital twins, and I definitely want to learn more about that and share more about that. But first I want to talk about sensors. You mentioned sensors. So what kind of sensor technology can you share that you know about?
Well, right now, and you can find this actually in the on the website for the Living Bridge that I mentioned before, they have things that would be typical, such as accelerometers that are reporting back the vibration that's being experienced on the bridge. And when you can map the vibration and you know the nature of the relative tensile strengths, for instance, of the pieces that are on sorry.
Or I can't help you either.
The bridge panels.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
the technical term I'm looking for. You can therefore understand and do analysis on the future potential of breakdown, as an example. And then there are things like strain gauges, which are important for obvious reasons, the amount of strain that's going on. Tilt meters, which will show you the actual change in a higher structure. You have one at the bottom, one at the top, and you can see sway and so forth, all of which will provide you with information about what's going on in the asset and the potential for significant depreciation and breakdown. There's another one that I think has a lot of potential. It's by a company that we work with, a company called Sensitech, and they have an ingredient which is called smart cement. Now, they make concrete maturity sensors that, as most of the products in the market do, measure the temperature of the curing of the concrete to give you an indication of its maturity. But they also use electrical resistivity as a measure of the concrete curing as well. So you actually have two variables that you can measure and compare. Because they have that ability to measure the electrical resistivity, they have also developed an ingredient that can be mixed into the concrete as it's being developed. And that is what they call smart cement. And basically it allows a medium for the electrical current to flow through that will allow them to determine the amount of strain throughout the concrete. So it's even better than having an individual gauge of that. And I think some things like that will have a lot of potential in smart infrastructure.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you why sensors are something that should be used, but I feel like everything you just said really elaborates on the value of using sensors in any way, shape, or form to track and measure and monitor anything that's happening with your project or your projects or products. So I think we'll just move on over to digital twins if Jillian wants to.
Yeah, I'd love to. So as most of you don't know, last year at the Precast show, which was in Columbus, Ohio, I actually gave a talk on digital twins, but I'm not the one here to talk today. So instead, Jeff, what are digital twins? This is a buzzword that we hear all the time. Tell me something about it.
Yeah. Well, it basically started describing them a few minutes ago. Essentially, a digital twin is a BIM model, a 3D BIM model, building information model, that also allows for the provision of data from sensors coming back. So obviously in a BIM model, you use that for design, and construction. In this case, you use that, but also it has the capacity to take data back from the sensors once the product is in the field. And as a result of that, you can use that BIM model as a central repository for all of your collaboration in design, manufacture, construction, and finally operation of the asset.
Yeah. So how I like to put it, and to sum up what you just said, it's basically a living system, a living model that shows exactly in real time what's happening with the physical asset, but digitally.
Exactly right. Better said than I did.
Yeah. So obviously we just talked about sensors, which are very important in getting that real-time information. But what kind of software would I need in order to have a digital twin active?
Yeah. Well, there are companies out there that provide the foundation, if you will, for digital twins. Bentley Systems is one that has a digital twin platform upon which they can be built. I'm pretty sure AutoCAD does, and probably Trimble as well. So what'll happen right now, what's happening is consultants are using those platforms to build individual digital twins for individual projects. My belief is we'll see what will happen there is what tends to happen in markets where they start with a lot of technical knowledge being required. And then they'll get to a point where they'll be offered as sort of standalone projects or products. The example, it was way back, but when they started selling cars, you needed to know how to be a mechanic in order to drive well, right? When they started selling PCs, you pretty much needed to understand how to develop software in order to be able to use one. That's not the case anymore.
Right.
Same thing will happen with digital twins.
Yeah. That definitely sounds like an improvement to me from my experience. It's not the easiest thing to get into, but I've seen a lot of benefits as well. You're able to limit the communication because it's all done behind the scenes through the digital twin. You can really connect the manufacturer and the product to the consumer and to their customer.
Right.
And ensure that that life cycle chain is all really condensed.
Exactly.
What are some other kinds of benefits that you can see, especially when you're speaking about DOT projects incorporating this kind of thing? What are the benefits that they're looking for there?
For the digital twins?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, it really gets to the efficiencies and specifically the economic efficiencies of being able to have all the data in one place and be able to collaborate. And then from the customer perspective, I think the greatest value is being able to take the data that's coming into that digital twin and run analytics on it. And that's where the DOTs will have a lot of savings by being able to understand, the wear and tear on assets as first of all, that'll allow for proactive maintenance. The maintenance will not require as much labor because while there will still be some labor required to go and do inspections, most of what is being inspected now could be available through the sensors in the digital twin. And then lastly, I think it's just a matter of they're going to find that it's safer. They're going to have better assets, better constructed assets because of all they learn from observing what's going on in the digital twins.
Yeah. To me, it sounds like almost the complexity of the digital twin is going to simplify everyone's life a little bit more and eliminate some of the wasted time and money that goes into maintaining these projects after the fact instead of doing that proactively.
It's exactly right. And it's like when the PC came out, I remember a commercial, it was probably back in the 80s, where it was a status symbol to have a PC in your house. And they promoted that in this commercial. And at that time, there were people that said they'll never take off. They'll never be in every house. Now, how could you imagine not having a PC in your house or using the computer on your phone that's embedded in your phone? The same thing will happen with digital twins.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I grew up with a computer room, and with laptops now we don't need computer rooms because every room is a computer room,
right?
Because you always have a computer even in your pocket.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, when I was in college, I took a computer programming class. I had to go to a whole building for it.
So seeing that digital twins and smart infrastructure as a general concept is the future. Is this something that Idencia has considered getting into at all?
Yeah, we're definitely going to be there. It's really the future of product data, right? I mean, that's where the product data will be housed. And this is why I think that product data is going to be offer so much more value to the entire construction value chain than people consider right now, because it's early in its evolution. But being able to have your products convey that information back about their wear and tear, or even right now, just about who made it, is going to be something that the market will absolutely demand. And the people, the manufacturers that recognize this and get ahead of that have a tremendous opportunity, because they will be recognized as the leaders and the preferred bidders.
Yeah, and right now, depending on your market segment and your business and how established it is, it's definitely a nice to have, but I can see it becoming a need to have, must have, sink or swim kind of situation.
Yeah, we're seeing that evolve just in the time we've been in business. So when we started, shortly after I started, the state of North Carolina started requiring that all of their concrete vendors tag their pieces with RFID tags and communicate their quality assurance data through an online vehicle, actually Idencia. And now we're starting to see the market look for environmental product declarations, right? And this is how much embodied carbon is in the product that you're manufacturing. Ultimately, it's going to be, okay, now we know how much. What are you going to do to make it better? What are you going to do to make it less of a carbon embodiment? All of these things are about the data that the product is producing. And as we go forward, that's going to become more and more. And ultimately, like we said, it'll end up with the sensors and the digital twins.
Yeah, and just to continue on, I mean, so you talked about how smart infrastructure is a way of conveying information about a product's manufacture, construction, and depreciation, and the use to it for its stakeholders. And definitely product data tracking ties directly into that.
Right.
Because, data, if you start tracking the data from day one and continue tracking it throughout its life,
right,
that's it. That's the information that you need. So could you elaborate a little bit further on the value that provides to smart infrastructure?
To the smart infrastructure, or to the manufacturers that are using it, or both?
Both.
Okay. Well, I would say, just starting where we are right now, where the market or some parties in the market are asking for things like digital quality control records and environmental product declarations, EPDs. Just those two, which they currently exist. Those are indicators that the market is going to move more and more toward more transparency in the products and more complete data. So that to me tells me that smart infrastructure is becoming more and more a when, not an if, because we're already seeing those undercurrents in place for that with the things I just mentioned.
Yeah.
Now, from the manufacturer's point of view, I think it's really, really quite simple. Any product, whether it's an infrastructure or anywhere else, that comes with information that is useful to the consumer, comes along with that, is more valuable. That's the difference between it being a commodity and a value-added product. Mm-hmm. So the manufacturers that get on this train early and recognize this are going to be the ones that are the best able to provide that value as the market starts requiring more and more of it. And that's where they're going to have their market leading advantage.
Yeah.
So those that recognize this early are going to be ultimately considered the leaders. And of course, there's also going to be a matter of kind of figuring things out and working out the kinks And those that do that earlier are going to be more efficient as a result than the ones that do it later too.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that same concept. I went to a marketing trade show this past year, and one of the things, the biggest thing is about AI. I'm sure everybody knows that AI is a thing. And they were just mentioning even generally early adopters are really the experts of any technology.
Right.
So, being an early adopter of AI, of course, in 5 years, you're going to be a lot better off than somebody who's just starting 5 years in the future. So same with product tracking, as starting that now and figuring it out and seeing the benefits and becoming a pro and being the expert come in 5 years if you start today.
Exactly. And you bring up another point about the evolution. Everybody in the last 6 months to a year has realized and seen the advent of AI really kind of moving forward in a big way.
Yeah.
Well, if everybody can understand that that's going to be here, then what does AI need to be the most effective but digital records?
Yeah, you need the data.
Right.
ChatGPT can't give you your definition and I don't want to say regurgitate. Exactly as you were saying earlier about how, you were asking ChatGPT and what you said is what ChatGPT would have said, right?
Exactly.
So,
right. Yeah.
And if that wasn't information on the internet, that wouldn't have come out.
Well, right. And I mean, can you imagine, this is a bit of an extreme example, but in a world where AI is much more embedded than it is right now, and customers depend on it for managing their operations, say the DOTs are depending on it to do their analytics, right?
Yep.
How do you sell a product to them that doesn't have that digital profile associated with it? It's valueless to them.
Exactly.
So it's not today,
Yep.
but it's going to be sooner than we think.
For sure.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't have any other questions. Jillian, do you have any other questions?
I do not. Thank you.
All right. Well, Jeff, do you have any final sayings about smart infrastructure that you care to share with the world?
Well, my guess is people think I've spoken enough. No, I don't. But I love having the opportunity to talk about it. And props to both of you for a very nice podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yeah, again, thank you again, Jeff, for being here today and speaking with us about smart infrastructure.
Pleasure.
And thank you, listeners, for your time today. Again, you can find our next episode wherever you prefer to listen to your podcast. And again, be sure to follow us on social media at Part in the Dust, as well as our Idencia pages at Idencia on LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube. And just to see all the latest and greatest updates about Idencia and also our next episode release and a tease to our next guest topic and more. So yeah, we hope you like the show. We're going to go get dusty somewhere and then go clean up for another episode of Part of the Dust.